All right, here we go. Let's start out in the electronics room. Here's an example. This is actually our VA30 amp. It's a new production model for us. Pretty basic. Preamp tube, phase inverter tube, a pair of push-pull circuit power tubes, and the rectifier, all tube. From the inputs, we come into the preamp tube. For the first stage of the preamp tube, it goes to the volume and the tone controls. Then back out to the second stage of the preamp tube for another gain circuit. From there it comes around into a third preamp gain stage, and then into the phase inverter, where the signal is divided for the two power tubes. You have the two power tubes here. Rectifier is right here. All the filtering components to keep the noise level down. This particular machine has a half power switch and a master volume. Over here, we have, these are all different samples of different amps that we make. From the small little Class A 5 watt, to the 8 watt Class A's, to our standard old Velcro circuits, some of our new stuff like something like that, or the twin amp. We also have layouts too, because many of these amps can either be guitar or harmonica. There's a fair amount of changes that happen for the harmonica amps. We need to control feedback. We need to try to develop that tone that the harp players are looking for. More dirt, more grunge, that where a guitar player might be looking for something substantially cleaner. But we really have to control the feedback, which is probably one of the toughest things to do. We also have literature that'll take into consideration any modifications that may need to happen depending on if something's different. For instance, anything that we do for a harp. We've got a couple of folders on harp amp modifications. So as you know, harp amps are a different animal. We have to control feedback, something we don't have to worry about with guitars. You're looking for a different tone. Most guitar players are looking for as much clean headroom as we can get. Harp players, just the opposite. We have to make something that's going to be dirty. Different kinds of microphones for harmonicas. So in some cases, we're going to have a low impedance input next to a high impedance input. Gain may be something you do or don't want, so we'll have either gain switches or gain inputs on these amps also. But again, every single one of them starts out as nothing more than just an empty chassis. We have these chassis made for us by a local guy. We use old school pushback wire. Pushback wire because all you have to do is push back the insulation, and there you have it. Popular with amps, amp manufacturing, radio manufacturing back in the 20s and 30s. They still make this stuff, surprisingly, so we still buy it. Different chords, US, Europe, UK, Australia. The amps end up going all over. Transformers. Habor in Michigan makes all of our transformers for us to our specs. Wonderful company, great folks, and I can get 100 transformers from them and usually not have a single one that I have to return. That's really hard to beat. Love those guys. So anyway, we have quite a few different ones. We have a couple different ones for the Class A amps, both output and imp and power. We have 3 different transformers for the push-pull circuits, depending on how much voltage we need. We have several different kinds of chokes. We moved to chokes about 3 or 4 years ago because it really helped increase our bottom end on these amps, on the push-pull amps. And it also kind of brings back more of that field coil speaker feel that well, basically, when these amps first came out, these old Valco circuits, they ran through old field coil speakers. This is only a few of what we have. We have a storage unit in town because, like I said, we'll have to buy literally hundreds of transformers at a time. They have minimums. Same with the wood. We have lots of wood that our CNC manufacturer is going to make for us. Chassis, we have to do 100 of each style of chassis. So we need a place to store all this, and we don't seem to have the room here. Here's where we keep our in-use pushback wire. Something a little thicker for the power tubes for the amperage going into the heaters. Again, Deirdre's getting all set to get this one started. This is going to be kind of like a trematone style amp for our cowboy amp. So this chassis actually is vertical. So she goes through, pulls all of her components that she's going to need, and gets things ready to roll. She'll go through everything except installing the transformers. I'll do that over here. Not so that she can't install the transformers well, but it's great to have a second person, getting this. I can take a look at that. I can put the transformers on that. Then I can give her back basically a finished amp, and she can take one more look at it. So at least we've got 3 sets of eyes on it before it actually goes into testing. Like for instance, if we put this cap on backwards, they will blow up and it makes a real mess. So we want to try to avoid that, and 3 sets of eyes is going to help that quite a bit. We also offer canvas dust covers for our amps, and again, Deirdre makes them here. We just go to Home Depot, buy rolls of canvas, and in this case with the Western Tone Master amp, we get that silk screened for that amp. But it's a nice little addition. And I think Deirdre has fun making them. Not sure, I'm a little afraid to ask. We actually have one of the very few houses with a small cellar in California. So what we've done with this cellar is we've kind of just fenced it off to keep the dust under control. We have a chop saw, a router, a table saw, a drill press, and it gives us the ability to fabricate most of our own cabinetry details. We do have a CNC shop that cuts and finger joins all the wood for us, so everything's always exactly the same. However, when we glue it together, we've got to round to the corners. We do that with the router. Sometimes we have to put grooves along the side for beading to join 2 different types of Tolexes, for instance. Never know when I'm going to need to drill some extra holes in some metal, so we've got the drill press for that. Chop saw just for, well, chopping. Here's where most of our cabinetry work goes, also where we do all the amp finishing, testing, and everything else related to that. This is the old card file, one of many from USC. One of my best friends was in construction, and he was in charge of building the new library for USC. Obviously, with the new library, the Dewey Decimal Card system was out. But as Craig was pulling these things out and throwing them away, he gave me a call saying, I think you'd be interested in one of these. So I went down and took a look at it. We got it back here, surprisingly. It weighs 1,000,000 pounds. But again, you can see every drawer has different components. We have everything labeled. We're used to where everything is, so it makes it really simple to keep everything organized and easy to find. And surprisingly, down to here and up, every one of these drawers is filled with something. Construction-wise, here's an example of, here's where we get started. Like I said, we have a CNC shop out in Hesperia that actually routes all the wood for us. So they'll put together everything finger jointed. We glue everything together here. No nails, all glue, no screws. Then once this is glued together, we go downstairs to the cellar area. where we do all the routing, any table saw work. We'll fabricate parts that need for back panels to go onto, for instance, like that. This amp has a speaker baffle, floating baffle on it, so it could take either a 12-inch speaker or a pair of 6x9s. Gets a tweeter here. You kind of get an idea of what the edges are going to look like, the finger jointing. But as strong as can be. David and I, one time, we were up at his place in Guerneville. We took 4 mini cabinets, we put a ramp, and we actually drove his Ford Ranger pickup, back when they were small little pickups, and set them, all 4 tires, on 4 mini amps, and everything held up just fine. So they can take a beating. Having said that, UPS has figured out how to ruin one of these amps more than once. Okay, here's all the clamps that we use for putting everything together. Masking, especially when we get into pinstriping. Everything's masked, spray it, in some cases several different colors, like with the 185 amp. Keep some speakers here. Again, most of the speakers are in storage. Glue. These are all jigs that we use so we can position holes for handles and things like that in the same spot every time. And just other miscellaneous parts, miscellaneous tools. For an end result, being an amp geek, I've always enjoyed having some of the old classics myself. These are both Wahoos from 1939. Both of them with the matching lap steel guitars. They're still completely original. Actually, I had to change one potentiometer on this. Other than that, even the filter caps are original. And it's, what, over 80 years old? And still sounds just fine.